Welcome to the Explainer. So you've probably seen them going viral online, right? Or maybe you've bought that absolutely pristine $6 box of arugula at the grocery store. It looks like a high-tech sci-fi utopia that's basically going to save the world. But today, we're going to strip away that viral aesthetic with the glowing purple lights, and we're going to reveal the gritty, highly demanding financial reality of urban vertical farming. We'll look at what it actually takes to run one of these operations, why so many quietly fail, and how the few survivors manage to turn a massive profit. Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. Think of this as our literal anatomy chart to dissect the business piece by piece. We've got 1. The myth versus reality. 2. The real yield mechanism. 3. Where the money bleeds. 4. The true revenue engine. And 5. The blueprint for survival. Let's peel back that first layer of the onion with Section 1, the myth versus reality. People usually expect a glittering skyscraper of agriculture right in the middle of a bustling metropolis. But the reality? It's cheap, completely windowless industrial warehouses situated just a few miles from downtown. No traditional farmland, no rich soil, and literally no natural sunlight. And here's where the sticker shock really hits you. To retrofit a typical 20,000 to 40,000 square foot warehouse, which is roughly what you need to produce enough leafy greens to actually matter, requires a staggering $3 to $8 million. This is definitely not a scrappy startup you can bootstrap in a garage. You are essentially building and outfitting a highly specialized, climate-controlled factory before you even plant a single seed. This is exactly the part nobody shows you when vertical farming goes viral online. That massive upfront capital requirement is the precise reason most folks who get fired up about this industry never even make it to day one. The barrier to entry is a massive concrete wall of infrastructure costs. Buying heavy-duty racking, industrial climate control, and complex water systems drains the bank account long before a single dollar of revenue is generated. So how do they ever make that money back? That brings us to Section 2, the real yield mechanism. Once you're past the initial capital shock, you really have to look at the biological engine of the business. The whole model becomes physically possible by stacking crops 10 to 15 layers high, bathed in LEDs meticulously tuned to the exact wavelengths each plant needs. Now, what's really interesting is the sheer velocity of the difference here. A traditional field farm gives you one harvest of lettuce every 60 to 70 days, and you're entirely at the mercy of the weather. But indoors, under total year-round climate control, you get a full harvest every 20 to 30 days. No droughts, no sudden freezes, no cloudy weeks, just continuous rapid-fire production. When you run that math out over an entire year, you get a 10 to 15x multiplier. Producing roughly 10 to 15 times the annual yield on the exact same footprint of land is not a marketing gimmick. It is the actual mechanical reason this entire industry exists. But an incredible yield alone doesn't guarantee a profitable business. Let's look at Section 3, where the money bleeds. I want to shift our tone here a bit because despite the amazing tech, vertical farms are quietly killed off all the time by some serious operational antagonists. Energy eats up a massive 25 to 40% of total operating costs. Running 24-hour climate control and thousands of LEDs absolutely evaporates margins if utility rates spike. And labor? That sits right behind it at 20 to 30%. We really need to bust the myth that robots are doing all the work in these places. Human beings are still doing the heavy lifting of seeding, transplanting, harvesting, and packaging. Now you might be wondering, but what about the water savings? Yes, it's true. Vertical farms use 90 to 95% less water than traditional field farming by using hydroponic and aeroponic systems. It sounds amazing, but those nutrient delivery systems introduce entirely hidden costs. You need constant monitoring, complex filtration, and extremely precise nutrient balancing. This requires expensive hardware and specialized labor that a traditional soil farmer simply doesn't have to worry about. Which brings us to a massive narrative hinge. If a vertical farm has to pay millions up front just to build a facility, bleeds cash on energy and manual labor, and has to maintain highly complex equipment, how can they possibly survive? Where does the money actually come from when traditional farming gets its land and sunlight for basically free? The answer lies in Section 4, the true revenue engine. The surprising truth is that vertical farms aren't really in the business of just selling vegetables. What they are actually selling to the market is time, proximity, and freshness. Because these urban farms are located just miles from the city center, their produce goes from harvest to the grocery shelf in a matter of hours, instead of spending days sitting in the back of a refrigerated truck crossing the country. Premium grocery stores and restaurants will happily pay a 20 to 40% markup for that. That's exactly why that box of local arugula cost a few dollars more. You are paying a premium for superior flavor, drastically extended shelf life, and absolutely zero pesticide use. But to command that premium, you have to grow the exact right things. Leafy greens and herbs are lightweight, fast-growing, and have a very high value per square foot, highly profitable. But wheat and potatoes, they are heavy, slow-growing, and have incredibly low value per square foot. If a startup tries to grow those in a vertically stacked warehouse, it is instant bankruptcy. The infrastructure cost is just too high. The survivors out there are ruthlessly disciplined about sticking strictly to things like basil, arugula, and microgreens. Which perfectly leads us into our final part, Section 5, the blueprint for survival. If we look past the splashy headlines of $100 million funding rounds and quiet shutdowns, we see startups usually collapse in their first 2 to 4 years from one of 3 lethal mistakes. 1. Underestimating energy costs. 2. Overexpanding their square footage way too early before proving the model works. And 3. Signing bad fixed-price supply contracts with grocery chains that lock them in at prices that don't cover their true production costs once utility rates shift. But if a startup navigates that brutal journey, avoids those 3 lethal mistakes, and reaches consistent production volume, the reward is very real. A well-run, established vertical farm can actually achieve extremely respectable gross margins in the 25 to 35% range. It really is a highly profitable business once you make it to the other side of the startup gauntlet. And this brilliantly illustrates the path to getting there. Step 1, start small, often under 10,000 square feet. Step 2, prove the unit economics actually work at that scale. Step 3, lock in strong relationships with premium buyers who will gladly pay for that hour 1 freshness. And Step 4, expand the square footage only when genuinely profitable, not before. It is a quiet, slow, and completely unglamorous blueprint, but it is exactly what keeps these companies standing 3 years later. To summarize our core thesis for today, strip away the aesthetic, and what's left is one of the most quietly demanding businesses in agriculture today. The plants are the easy part, and the numbers are what actually decide who's still open next year. The failure point in vertical farming almost never lives in the biology. The plants want to grow. The failure point lives entirely in the spreadsheet. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. As global energy costs fluctuate and automation technology inevitably evolves, will the spreadsheet ever allow vertical farms to scale up and affordably feed the masses? Or are they just destined to remain a highly profitable, premium engine reserved for urban freshness? It's a fascinating question for the future of our food supply. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.